2,000 people showed up for the premiere. It was completely crazy. You're gonna go see it, and you're gonna be like, nobody warned me.
Nobody warned me.
I lost 2 brothers to suicide. 40% of men say that they would rather consider suicide before having a conversation with a therapist.
Part of the issue is we are now in a moment where Black folks and brown folks are starting to talk about therapy publicly. It's still expensive. And not only is it still expensive, have you tried to find a Black male therapist? And it says, hey, this is Oprah. I want to talk to you. Cool, Oprah, hit me back anytime. Holla, right? So about an hour later, my phone rings and...
Welcome to this special edition of Influence to Equity in collaboration with...
It's gonna hurt, but it won't kill you, where we talk about resilience, tenacity, and how we operate in the face of adversity. Today's guest, man, I don't think there's an intro I could properly give him for the work that he does, but he is a writer, director, and artist that if you have not seen his work, you are truly missing out. We had the fortune of being invited to a screening, and the question that he asked me at the end of that was, did you know what you were going to expect? And
No.
The follow-up to that was, did you know what to expect again? And I'm like, absolutely not. We had no idea what to expect, yet here we are with Mr., or should I say the Titus Kaphar, who, again, is just such an amazing artist, such amazing at what he does. But Sara, I think you had something to add to that as far as this conversation goes, because
There are so many elements. You're so multifaceted, and we could start with the art, and we could talk about the social issues and all of those things. But I want to start with, given the fact that I was not prepared for the experiences that I had, even though I saw it more than once, who the heck is Titus Kaphar?
Oh my God. So let's start with a smart question. Who the heck is Titus Kaphar?
Who are you?
It's actually an ever-evolving answer. And I'm finally becoming comfortable with that. I think there are core things about me that will never change, but I am frequently finding myself in new adventures and deciding to add those parts that I learned in those adventures to who I am. So if you had asked me 10 years ago who was Titus Kaphar, I probably would have said, first I would start with I'm a husband and a father, and those will always be at the core. And then the next thing I probably would have said was that I'm a painter. And I realize now that when I say a painter now, what I mean is that that's the framework, that's the lens through which I see the world. Mm-hmm. It's not speaking particularly to the medium that I'm working in necessarily, because as you said, I may write, I may direct a film, I may make a painting, but when I write through the lens of a painter. Mm-hmm. When I direct a film through the lens of a painter. In this film, I'm trying to make a painting in motion.
So, what I learned about you, and you could tell me how true this is, as you were exposed to paint in your art history course in junior college, and you decided to visit a couple of museums to really learn how to actually do the work.
Yeah.
How true is that?
It's very true. So it's just the order of the story. But basically, I wasn't a painter. I wasn't expecting to be an artist or anything like that. Mm-hmm. I was a musician. I wanted to be a rock star. I'm a bass player. Like, that's what I thought my life was. And then I met this extraordinary woman who was much older than me. She was 4 years older than me. I was literally just graduating high school. She was graduating college. And I wanted to just go out on a date. And she was like, you're not really thinking about your future right now. You want to be a rock star. Why don't you do something?
Right.
And so I ran down to the junior college, registered for some classes, came back and said, I'm thinking about my future. We should go out. She thought it was funny too. We went out and the rest is history. But in registering for classes, I randomly picked up an art history class. Yep. I've said before, if I was thinking about it, I have no recollection of thinking about it. But if I was, it was probably the thought, well, it's art, so it's got to be easy. Not thinking that it is a history class about art. So I got in that class, and for the first time, I realized that I had a visual intelligence that was never required of me in any of my other classes. I was asked to look at paintings and kind of remember what those paintings were about based on the image. In that moment, in that time, I realized that my brain functions way better with images. So I started to use images to help me learn all the things that I wanted to learn. So I did incredibly poorly in high school. I did my worst GPA was 0.65. And then by the time I got this art class and started figuring stuff out, I ended up on the dean's list and then ultimately graduated from Yale. So it wasn't at junior college that I started painting. I was just introduced to art in junior college and realized that this was something I was passionate about. I took more art history class. Then I got to the state school, and it's at the state school where I took my first painting class. And I realized then, I was like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life. This is it. This is it for me. So I had a painting class, but my teacher, the very first day of class, this is no joke, he put up a still life in the center of a class, and he said, express yourself.
Wow.
And that was his instruction. That was all he didn't tell you about, like how to mix the colors. He didn't tell you about the paint. He didn't tell you about composition. He didn't tell you about form. He was a terrible teacher. Terrible teacher. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it. Yeah. You know who you are. So in order to actually learn how to paint, I ran to every opportunity I possibly could. There was an art store in our area, and every once in a while there was this lady, she would come in, and she would her name was Linda Harris. She would do these portraits. She would have people come in and sit, and she would paint them, and you could be in her class. Now, I couldn't afford to be in her class, so I would just sit at the window just watching what she did, trying to figure out, okay, she's mixing those colors with that color. How's she gonna get that? And then, that she laid it out with the brush first. She didn't use a pencil. Okay, cool. And after like 4 or 5 times of seeing me outside her window, like peeking in at her, she goes, "You want to sit and model for the class?" I was like, "Bet, I can see you closer. That's perfect." So I modeled for the class, and that is literally you stand still for 2 hours and you're looking at her the whole time. I can see her palette the whole time. So I'm watching her and I'm listening to what she's telling the class. And that was really the real introduction to me into like the real process of painting. So I'm in school, but at the same time, I'm doing this because I'm not getting what I need in school. Right. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey, and it has not been a straight line.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It makes me, and I say this with all due respect, Titus, we're friends now, so I can say this. There's no amount of peeping through a window, museums that I could have went to, and expressed yourself that I could have been a part of, that would have allowed me to paint anything more than a struggle, suffering stick figure.
All right.
How do you see the world like that?
No, okay, so here's the thing. Thank you. But I've had this conversation with a lot of people. So I could show you my first sketchbook. It is nothing special. It's not even good. It's not good at all. It's in fact bad. It's just bad. But when you go to like page 10, you see, it's getting a little bit better. It's still not good. It's just better than it was. That was the thing that kept me motivated. It wasn't that I was good when I started. It wasn't that I had any particular talent for it. It was that I saw progress. And in so many other areas of my life, I didn't see any progress. But I could take this sketchbook with me. I can draw one day, and I can draw another thing the next day, and draw another thing the next day, and I will see the progress. That to me is motivation, right? Success breeds success. That's what it was about. So I say that first. The second thing I say is I can teach anybody to draw. I've won this bet. I've won this bet every single time. All right, $100. If you can write your name, I can teach you how to draw. Okay. That doesn't mean you're going to be a great artist. Yep. Being able to know the technique does not teach you how to express yourself, how to translate the form into meaning, right? That is a thing that I think comes from some place else. That's the magic of it all, right? In terms of like, if you sat down with me over a year period, less than a year period, we would draw this still life over here every day. And by the end of it, you would go, I understand how to translate that into this, because that's what drawing in particular, and painting is translation. And it seems crazy right now, just as if we went to Greece and we were hearing people speak Greek, we'd be like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you learn the language, then all of a sudden, everything opens up for you. So translating three-dimensional objects into two-dimensional objects, putting them on paper, is just simply learning the language.
Yeah. And even in what you just said right now, you have to immerse yourself within it. And if you have been fortunate enough, like us, to be able to share in this experience, you could see how through multiple mediums you're expressing yourself.
Yeah.
How important is it for you to be able to express yourself freely?
In the beginning, like I said, I would just describe myself as a painter. I'm just a painter. I make paintings, and that's all I did. And I love painting. I always loved paintings. As I progressed in my practice, there were moments where it was like, this idea needs to be articulated in a different language. So it's like that saying, if you only have a hammer, everything becomes a nail. If the only skill I have is as a painter, then everything becomes a painting. That's fine. I can make pretty paintings. That's beautiful. But what if that thing actually wants to be a sculpture? What if that idea that the muses gave to you wants to manifest itself as a theater piece? If you are unwilling to grow your skill set, then everything is just going to stay a nail. So for me, my practice has always been one where when the idea tells me, no, this one is not a painting. And I'm like, damn, okay, all right. So I guess I got to find a teacher now. So I was really fortunate enough with this, with this project to be able to find great teachers on the way who helped me understand the craft of filming.
Yeah.
We have these conversations a lot about the burden and responsibility that is required with our influence. How does that feel, and how does that resonate with you?
That's something I struggle with a lot, because I mean, y'all know, we're doing this for the internet. Hey, what's up? But your folks are going to be like, who is this Titus Kaphar person? And then the first thing they're going to do is like, let me check out his IG. And they're going to go, this dude ain't got an IG. Right? Like, well, he kind of old. Let me check Facebook. This dude ain't got Facebook. And you will very quickly realize I have zero social media.
Right.
And so in terms of like how I feel about the responsibility of this, it's challenging because I'm very social. You saw it last night. We're doing all this stuff and whatever. But honestly, you give me my paintbrush, you give me my studio, turn on my music, and leave me alone, and I'm good.
Yep.
So like for me, it is very difficult to take on that other aspect of this. And what I hope is that the work that I make will be my voice in that way. I don't have Instagram, I don't have social media, but all my friends are always like screenshotting me stuff. See how many people are posting your images over here? You need to be on the ground. Like, no, that's like the most beautiful version of it. Yeah. I'm not out here promoting myself. People see what I do and then they're doing it. To me, that feels like, okay, the work is actually working. It's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Yeah. That said, the part that I do completely accept is that there is a responsibility for us as artists, as people in our position now, to speak back to the people behind us and help bring them forward. So I started a not-for-profit called Next Haven, and NXTHVN. It's a 45,000 square foot arts accelerator for Black and brown artists. In our program, we give every artist who comes in, give them a stipend, We give them free housing. We give them studio space, and then we have a whole curriculum designed around the business of art. I come in, I teach a few classes. I have some of my artist friends teach classes. I have accountants teach class. I have media people come teach classes. I have lawyers come teach classes. We want to help Black and brown artists be equipped to navigate this art world. So for me, taking the way that I'm dealing with the influence piece of it is I'm concentrating the little bit of influence I have to that. I can pour into these 7 artists in this program. I can give them my time. I can give them my energy and know that it's going to be multiplied, because then they're going to take that out like disciples and spread it to the world.
So what you're saying is, Sara and I, as we learn how to draw, we should come over to New Haven.
Come to New Haven. You can apply to Next Haven. You can apply. Yeah, you gotta apply. Yeah, you gotta apply. You gotta apply. Everybody has to apply. Ain't no free rides. Don't call me talking about, I saw you. No, that's not correct.
I'm knocking on your door in New Haven, be like,
When we started the program, we got 300 applications for 7 slots. Wow. This year, we got 800 applications for 7 slots. Wow. Not from America, not from Canada, all over the planet. We have fellows from Nigeria. We have fellows from Ghana. We have fellows from Israel. We have fellows from South. We have people like all over the planet coming to New Haven to do this program because, frankly, there are very few things like it in the world. You have residency programs where you can do some art, show your work, or you have residency programs where you disappear into the world. But Next Haven, our fellows are incredibly engaged in their community, and every single artist in our program works with the high school student. Everybody has an apprentice. So the high school that's right up the street, they send us their kids. Our kids work with those different artists, being introduced to art at a really, really high level and getting paid to do so. So all of our high school students get paid better than minimum wage. So I think it's a pretty dope program.
It sounds like it's easier to get into Yale.
Right.
It is, statistically speaking, right now, it is actually easier to get into Yale than it is to get in our program. When I applied to Yale, but let me say this too. Hold on. If you don't get in, you got to apply again. So I went through the whole process of painting, learning how to paint, like I told you about, going to the school, peeking in people's windows and stuff like that. And I had a professor at the end of that program, Robert Carrito. He's a painter in Northern California, because I was going to school in California at the time. He said, you should apply to graduate school. And he said, you should apply to Yale. Now, I grew up in Michigan. Nobody I know went to an Ivy League, nothing like that. So when he said Yale, I said, what's Yale? And this dude just started cracking up laughing. He thought that was the craziest thing in the world. I was like, okay, now you're done laughing. Tell me what's Yale. That's just to say I was so disconnected from the academy that it didn't, I didn't know what he meant. And he goes, it's one of the best schools in the country. What are you talking about? I said, okay, best school in the country. That sounds good. I'll apply to that. So I applied and I didn't get it. And I was like, damn, okay, all right, maybe my application wasn't great and I was really disappointed. You know what? I'm gonna apply again. So I applied again. I didn't get in. And then I cried. I just cried and cried and cried and cried. But I made a decision at that moment. I said, okay, these people can't stop me from being an artist. An artist just has to make art. Let me make art. And then I'm gonna apply every year till these folks just get so tired of me. They're like, let's just let this man in. So I applied one more year, and that's the year that I got in. And every year I made different work. I applied with different work. I say all of that to say, if you apply to Next Haven and you don't get in, that does not mean stop. We're putting together cohorts. We're not just picking individuals. These are 7 people that have to live and work together for almost a year. And so it may not be your time. Your time might be the next time. And it's worth trying again if it's something that you're really interested in.
For sure. You actually just mentioned it a second ago. You talked about you being disconnected from this even idea of Yale.
Yeah.
And with the work that you do, a lot of people who are actually purchasing it are disconnected from the message, disconnected. There's something that was said in Shut Up and Paint, where they talk about, hey, I don't buy Titus Kaphar because I love the message is because I love the artwork. I actually reverse that. But talk to me about the importance of being able to share your work with the people who it was intended for.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenge, man. It's a really interesting moment for me in my career. Like I'm sort of, I would say by all measures, I'm pretty much at the top of my career. I mean, I have worked in the biggest museums in the country. I've worked in the Metropolitan. I've worked in the Whitney Museum, Chicago. I've worked all over the world, and I recognize that a lot of times our folks don't get to that work. Growing up, we didn't go to museums. That's not what we did. Right. You know, my mom was working 2 and 3 jobs. She wasn't trying to take me to a museum. She was trying to sleep when she got home. So that just wasn't the experience. So it's great. I have this work in this institution, but the people I love, the folks I grew up with, are not feeling welcome in these spaces, right? You come into this gallery here, it's a dope gallery. I'm really happy with everything that they've done, the project that we put together. You saw it yesterday. These people actually really believe in me. It's kind of insane because I said, yeah, we're just going to take apart the gallery. We're going to build a theater inside of it. We're going to do a live performance. We're going to have some smoke. They're like, oh, okay. Okay.
The stuff that we do all the time, right?
Yeah. And we did that, and they said they loved the idea, they invested in the idea. But sometimes we see Black folks come into the space and not feel welcome. Yeah. There's somebody who stands at the front desk like a guard. And so you're wondering, am I supposed to be here? Am I not supposed to be here? And if you don't have an art history background, you stand in front of this red square and you're like, what the hell is this shit? Yep. Like you're trying to figure out why somebody says that is valuable and that is important. And so what is exciting to me about this moment is that the film has crossed that bridge. Whereas the gallery space does not necessarily feel like the space that is welcoming to Black folks. We all go to the movies. We all, watch something on Hulu. Although, please, my film comes out October 18th. Go into the theaters to let these people know that Black folks actually get out there and see movies. Okay. Shameless plug. Okay, so
plug it away. Plug it away.
When this comes out, film is out today. Film is out today. Go watch it today.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I feel like I'm watching people watch this film and watching it have an impact on them. And then because they've spent 2 hours watching this film, they understand these paintings. They understand every metaphor, every analogy. So they're fully equipped to walk into these spaces with their heads up, their shoulders back, and like, oh, that's Titus Kaphar. I know that shit. I understand. I can talk to you about that. And in many ways, for a lot of us, the experience of the film, it so resonates with our own experience, you will be more prepared to have a conversation about this work than the people who actually work here. And to me, that is an act of empowerment. Like being able to give that message to our folks. They can see the movie anywhere. It's not just gonna be in some like fancy art theaters. It's gonna be in, your AMCs, your Cinemarks, where it can actually get to folks, right? And Magic Johnson, if you're watching, I would like to have it in your theater as well. So hit a brother up.
You gonna make it happen?
Yes.
Yeah. Do some magic.
I actually know some people who know some people.
Okay, let's get it done.
The first time I met you, we had this conversation. And by the way, the film that we're talking about is Exhibiting Forgiveness, which comes out today. Go watch it today. When I would be lying if I said that I'm like this art expert or enthusiast. I just love and appreciate art, especially art that I can resonate with, art that I can see myself in, which doesn't happen very often.
Right.
And I go into art galleries, like you mentioned, and I can appreciate the art, but it doesn't connect with me on an emotional, heart-wrenching, just I can't connect with it like that because it's not my lived experience. But then I look at your paintings, and as a woman of color, as an immigrant, as someone who was born in a refugee camp, as someone who watched my parents, work really, really hard, just trying to survive and navigate this experience as being Black in America in the 90s. And those experiences don't necessarily resonate with our other brothers and sisters. And I remember last night there was two women standing looking at a painting, and they're appreciating the art, but I'm living the art.
You bring up a really interesting point, because this film seems to affect everyone, but the people who have a synergistic experience, life experience with the material. I don't even have words for it. It opens you up. That's the word. It opens you up in a way. It wasn't my intention. Like, I didn't set out and go, oh, let me make this film in order to do that. That's not what I was doing. Those are the kinds of magic. That's the kind of magic that happens beyond us, beyond, I think, the physical world. And so I'm finding that for us, for Black and brown folks, our experience with the material is felt deeply, because we don't get to see ourselves on film like that.
Yep.
I think that's a significant part of it. So what happens is there's a connection, because the people on the screen look like you. And so you can imagine your mother in that position. You can imagine yourself in that position. And I love all kinds of movies, and I connect to all kinds of movies. But the ability to imagine myself in that character's shoes is sometimes more difficult. That doesn't make the film better or worse or whatever. It just makes it more difficult. And so we are beginning to find that the experience that you had is certainly the norm. And then you screen the film in a place like Birmingham, Alabama. So we screened the film in Birmingham, Alabama at the Sidewalk Film Festival. 2,000 people showed up for the premiere. It was completely crazy. And it was Black and white. It was a very mixed audience. And what you're saying happened. And then in that, this one white dude walks up to me and in tears and talking about, I know we have a very different life experience. You got that whole Black thing. And I was like, yeah. And I thought, I'm like, oh shit, he's about to say something stupid. God, please don't let him say something stupid. And he said, but that's my father too. And I was like, okay, tell me more. He said, my father is addicted to drugs, and he's still addicted to drugs. And I don't want to forgive him. And after seeing your movie, I feel like I have to rethink my approach to dealing with him. And then the dude starts crying. And so it's been surprising to me. What hasn't been surprising to me is our reaction. Yeah. Obviously, I know that. I experienced that myself. But surprising to me is the way that it's getting into the world, and some people are able to connect to it in that deep way. Even if they can't imagine themselves in the situation, they can see the situation related to their situation. So it seems like the film has legs, like it has the potential to go out into the world as wide as it can.
What I find intriguing is exhibiting forgiveness is almost like a triple entendre in a sense, because it's the exhibit itself, the movie, and then actually exhibiting forgiveness to someone.
Yeah.
Help me understand more about what that actually means to exhibit forgiveness.
So this is not a film that gives easy answers, right? Like, if you're looking for a film that at the end of it, you just go, oh, everything made sense. It's all clear and tied up in a bow. I'm all happy now, whatever. This ain't that. I'm just saying that because you're going to go see it and you're going to be like, nobody warned me.
Nobody warned me. Twice.
Y'all didn't get warned. So therefore we're warning you, okay?
You ain't ready, okay?
So and the reason why I feel like you might need a warning is because we're just not used to seeing stuff that feels that real. Yeah. It's just real. The performances from Andre Holland and Aunjanue and Earl Jelks and Andra, there were moments on that set where it's like, y'all are not acting, you are conjuring. This is something totally different. You don't see them performing. They're not performing anything. Each one of them is digging into their own experiences and manifesting it on the camera. And there are several times where I just lost it. I just completely lost it. We were doing that scene that was the upstairs in the gallery scene, which didn't happen in real life in the gallery. It actually happened in my studio. And when it happened in my studio, I was, went through the situation, was like, dust it off, whatever, I had to get back to work. I didn't allow myself to feel everything that I actually felt. But when I watched Andre go through the thing that I had gone through, it just floored me. It completely floored me. I was on the floor. That is not hyperbole. I was on the floor sobbing for half an hour and I could not stop. I'm not that dude. Yeah. I'm not the dude who was even allowed to cry. Yep. Boys don't cry. That's how we got, boy, you better get up and get to work. We got things to do. That's how I was raised. So as I'm shooting and I'm finding myself out of control, unable to stop my crying, I am trying to process all of the feelings and at the same time really just angry at myself because I'm crying like this in public. So I leave the set. I lock myself in a dark room. I lay on the floor and just let the waves of pain just like roll over me and sob and sob and sob and sob. And then after that, I come back and my whole team is so supportive. Like, good, this is great. We can get back anytime you want to take your time. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening in this film. There is a conversation. Let's be clear. There's a conversation around generational trauma, but the film is about generational healing, and that I would never make a project like this where I left people in that space of trauma. Like the film is made to take us through something so that we can get out into a new thing. And I believe that it actually works.
I'm going to ask a question to both of you. I hope that's okay, Tilmon.
I guess so. It depends on the question.
I mean, you can't go anywhere. Tilmon, your work has evolved over the course of the last year and a half, and the work that you currently do, or that you've been also given the burden and the responsibility of carrying, is to talk to men. And to talk to men about their mental health, to talk to men and having true, deep conversations and honest, vulnerable conversations around the experiences that you all have that you don't get to talk to other people. I think it was Lewis House who I heard him say, they were in a room, he asked all the women, how many of you talk to your mom, your sister, or have someone that you call at least once a month? And almost everyone raises their hand. And how many of you have someone once a week? Almost everyone raises their hand. Once a day, my mom, my sisters, whatever, every day. And then he asked the same question to the men. And it wasn't even 30% of the room that raised their hand for once a month. And the question asked is, how would you feel if you only could talk to your mom or your sister once a month? And a lot of the women said, I would go crazy. I would lose my mind. And so the question I want to ask to both of you is, through the work, Tilmon and Titus, that you all do, the responsibility you feel in talking to men about the traumas and the stress, and that you're not allowed to cry and you need to be a provider, but it's at the expense of yourself. Create art at the expense of yourself. What does that mean to both of you?
So, you had to go deep on that.
I'm dropping it right now.
Yeah, I'm still processing.
Yeah. So I think for me, one of the things I still even struggle to talk about is that I lost 2 brothers to suicide. I lost 2 brothers within 7 months to suicide. I don't think that's something I've like stated publicly in a platform like this, but it's real. It's my experience. And there's these things that I think about, all these stats. 40% of men say that they would rather consider suicide before having a conversation with a therapist. And men represent 50% of the population, but 79% of suicides. But we're also not talking to people. So it's a responsibility to actually have these types of conversations. One of the things I make a joke about all the time is like, I will cry and still outlift you. I want to give.
I want that on a t-shirt. I want that on a t-shirt.
Because to what Titus was talking about was just being able to express those feelings and expressing yourself. But there's all these mediums where you can express yourself. In Titus's case, it's the paintings, it's the sculptures, it's the installations that he does. It's the films, the documentaries, Shut Up and Paint. It's all of these things because there's people who don't want you to talk. And they don't want you to talk for a reason. But if you create the space for those conversations, not only for other people, but for yourself. Because if you're not talking to your wife, you're not talking to your friend, you're not talking to a therapist, you're holding all of these things in, and on the other side of that, we show up as 79% of suicides. And I know those numbers. It was over 48,000 in 2022. It was over 49,000 in 2023. And at the rate it's going, it's going to be over 50,000 for this year. So these are things that continue to show up for me and speaks to the responsibility of not only what I'm doing, but when you got people like Titus who are sharing these experiences and talking to people about the trauma and the importance of having conversations that we're not having, I think if you don't do the work, then you're missing an opportunity to not only educate people, but to save people in the end.
Man. Yeah, that, you know, in some ways, I think maybe I gave up a little bit on the idea that I was going to be able to evolve any more on that sort of emotional front. Just like, yeah, you know, how many of you talk to somebody every day like that? You know, outside of my life, you know, my good friend Rodney Franks, my brother, I call him a lot, but it's really not that much. It's really not that much. I invested my hope in my children, right? Like, I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to fix myself. That's a little bit of a cop-out, let me confess that. But I'm gonna pour everything I can into these boys. I'm gonna make sure that they understand that as a man, there is nothing wrong with your emotions. Like, understanding your emotions is a superpower. And so, like, I have poured everything into trying to help them do that. And I have been using my artwork as a means for me to sort of wrestle with the things that I've wrestled with. I don't think I've talked about this publicly, but I was attempting to, okay, I know how I want to talk about this. Part of the issue is we are now in a moment where Black folks, brown folks are starting to talk about therapy publicly. And it's really, really good. And we're talking about going to see therapists and stuff when a generation ago, we weren't having that conversation. It's still expensive. And not only is it still expensive, have you tried to find a Black male therapist? So when I was actually going through some stuff, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna find a therapist. And I called this person, called that person. All the brothers were booked. It was booked. And and I'm not saying anything about white female therapists. I'm not. I'm just saying in general, in the situation I was in, I said, okay, I gotta do something. Let me go talk to this lady. And it was clear at a certain point that the issues that I wanted to talk about as they related to race and the struggles that I was dealing with specifically at that time was all new to her. And so I felt like I was spending a whole lot of time trying to inform her, help her understand some of the challenges that that y'all know implicitly.
Yep.
And so it completely turned me off. And I was like, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work for me. And I stopped. I have since found a brother that has some time. But his schedule is packed. It is packed. And like, good for him.
Yeah, sure.
It's really, really good for him. But if you are thinking about a career, brothers, I suggest maybe considering becoming a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, because we definitely need more folks out there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's interesting because there's actually, before I misquote this, I'm gonna pull it out. And I hate pulling out my phone, but I'm gonna pull it out anyway. Because I remember as I was going through this experience and trying to understand what I was dealing with, I started reading more. And I consider myself to be an avid reader, but I wasn't reading as much as I do now. And then I came across this James Baldwin quote. And even today I came across this Titus Kaphar quote. I'm like, oh, whoa. That speaks very much to me. But this particular quote, James Baldwin says, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read, it was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive and who had ever been alive." How does that resonate with you?
Paul's like, man. I mean, you know, my film starts with the Baldwin quote.
Yep.
I mean, you can never go wrong with Baldwin. I mean, he's right. And that's kind of what you're saying right there is kind of the point that I was making about the film. Like he said, connected me to all the people who lived and ever have lived. And so what he's talking about is our shared humanity. And that goes beyond like our flesh, that goes beyond our color in the world. And he's right. It is books that will often bring you to that place. I hope that paintings can bring you to that place. And sometimes I think films can bring you to that place too.
I think about the first time we saw the film Exhibiting Forgiveness at the NFL Network. And I wondered, in full transparency, if I would feel differently watching it the second time or what emotions it would evoke. And it is painful. It can be frustrating. I won't give away too much, but there's someone that would, in the film, where you would consider this person to be a villain, but you find his humanity and you find grace and redemption wanting to fight for it in this film. And so I ask you, I want to know, why was it important for you to make this film now and release it now?
First, I love what you say about villain and then finding humanity, because I started this project by sitting down and writing, not writing the script. I was trying to write essentially a long letter to my sons in the way that Baldwin would write letters to his nephew. I wanted my sons to understand a little bit about their daddy's specific crazy. I had spent so much time saying to them over their lives, well, I'll tell you when you're older, I'll tell you when you're older. My son is 17 and going off to college next year. Wow. And so I sat down and I started writing. And as I started writing, it became very clear to me that my father is not the villain in the narrative of my life. In many ways, my father is as much a victim of the things that he perpetrated because it's what was shown to him. It's not an excuse. I'm not letting him off the hook in that way. But what I am saying is the process of writing helped me understand where my father was coming from. We grew up in a very difficult place at a very difficult time. If my father had raised me in a different way, there would be questions about my survival. In that space, in that time, my father felt like it would be a miscarriage of justice to put a boy into the world that is so aggressive and so violent and have him be soft, right? That was his thinking. So in his mind, he is creating this armor around me. If you're hard enough, if you're strong enough, if you work you will survive, right? That's what that was his intention. The way that he went about it was not right, but he only knew what he knew.
Right.
And he knew what he knew because he was taught that by his father. And that is the whole generational conversation that we're having. And so I wrote the film in a way that my father's humanity can be seen, that the main character, the artist, is not the hero, and the father is not the villain. It's not that didactic. It's not that simple.
Yeah. You said something about the more successful you become, the less people who your work is intended for have access to it. How does that change with exhibiting forgiveness?
So we only have a few minutes, so I'm gonna try to make this quick.
Yeah.
I woke up one morning. This is a true story. This is all true. I woke up one morning and I went to my studio. I was sitting in front of my paintings, the paintings from Exhibiting Forgiveness. And I was looking at the painting of the boy on the bike. And as I was sitting in my looking chair, I said, Oprah needs to see these paintings. Out of the blue, just Oprah needs to see these paintings. I called my assistant and I said, hey, we're gonna film a commercial for Oprah, basically promoting this painting and say, you should come see this. He said, bet. I said, I'm gonna run to the store, I'm gonna go buy some paintbrushes because I wanna have some nice fancy paintbrushes when we shoot this. I get to the art store, I'm picking up my brushes, I get to the cash register and my phone vibrates. And it says, hey, this is Oprah, I wanna talk to you. I call, this is not my assistant, my artistic director at the time. I call my artistic director and I was like, okay, funny, I don't recognize the number. Who'd you have call me? He's like, what are you talking about? I said, Oprah just texted me saying she wanted to talk to me. And he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't tell anybody. Why would I tell anybody?
Wow.
So I text back like, cool, Oprah, hit me back anytime. Holla, right? This is not, there's no way. So about exactly, right? You ain't getting me. Right. So about an hour later, my phone rings and it's her voice.
Yes.
Wow. She calls me and she's like, Titus. I said, what the hell? Hey, Oprah, what's going on? What you doing? Why are you calling me?
Do you know that you're calling me?
Yeah. Was this an accident? And I said, so what do you want to talk to me about today? And she said, I just saw your movie, Shut Up and Pay.
Wow.
And she goes, I just wanted to call you to tell you, I think you're wrong. And I was like, let me get this straight. You called me only to tell me that I was wrong. Like, hold on, yeah. Like, I'm looking for some inspiration or whatever. You want to tell me I'm wrong, right? I said, say more. And she said, I saw you in that film, and you carry this heavy burden on you. You have survivor's guilt, and maybe everybody else doesn't see it, but I see it. It's all over you. I said, it's interesting that you were able to pick that up. Tell me more. She said, your premise for this film is that your work belongs in our community. And she said, it does, but it belongs everywhere. It belongs everywhere. Everybody needs to see it. She said, I've been in these rooms with these billionaires and they talk about you, Titus, and they talk about your work and they talk about these pieces. And what you are doing is you are educating them. She said, I already know about Sally Hemings and Thomas Jefferson. They don't. They are not having those conversations. So she said, do not limit yourself in that way. This work belongs to the world. And I was like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Like, what else? What do you say?
Yeah.
What do you say to that? And ever since then, she has been like in my corner. Like Oprah has been fighting for me and this project. And get out. You saw her last night.
She said right in front of us, thanks to this guy, I got to meet Oprah in person.
She has been. It's crazy, man, because that came out of the blue. That wasn't like planned or orchestrated. It was literally just how I told you that day. God was like, oh, interesting. I know what I'm gonna do to Titus today. I'm gonna have Oprah call him just so he can understand it. And as my grandma would say, ain't that just like God?
Right.
Because God said to himself, this dude is really hard-headed. I have tried to tell him this story a lot of times, and he is just not getting it. Who can I call to get him to listen? I'm gonna call Oprah. Let me have Oprah call him. I hear you now, Lord.
Right.
Lord, I hear you.
I love it.
Oh my goodness. I would love to continue to have this conversation, but I know you have so much going on today. You all, thank you so much for tuning in to this special episode with our friend Titus Kaphar. And this is Influence to Equity in collaboration with...
It's gonna hurt, but it won't kill you. Titus, appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, bro.
Yes, sir.